All right. Let's get it going here. Hello there, EnviroBoy. This is my channel. It's a really gloomy Tuesday out today. Like super rainy all day. I mean, it's warm. It's nice, but boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Hey, Kaldar. How's it going? Good to see you here. Yeah, it's been a rainy, gloomy day all day today here. Which as a general thing, I don't mind. I'm pretty okay with a nice rainy day, so that way I don't feel too guilty about staying inside all day. But I don't know, man. It's like it's dark enough that like I'm looking at my own image and it looks like I'm just like recording at night. Like there's no natural light coming through the big, giant, like window door that my desk is bumped right against here. There's no light. It is a dark and dreary Tuesday. But it is like Tuesday, as in like, you know, the number 2, as I'm sure everyone everywhere has pointed out all day long. But I mean, come on, man. Tuesday with 2/22/2022. I mean, the only way for it to be better is for it to be 22/22 the year. So we got 200 years to get a better day than today, as far as how them numbers line up. And so, you know, maybe with luck we'll all be around to see that. Probably not, but hey, we can always hope, right? We can always hope, and we can all work on becoming super skilled doctors who will keep us all alive that long. So, at any rate, it is Tuesday, which means that our writing stream today is going to revolve around working on some lore for the world, and I have some stuff that I want to work on today. I don't know that I'm adamant that we need to finish it today, but yesterday we finished up chapter 5 of our campaign, which I was pretty stoked about, making progress like that. And so in preparation for moving on to chapter 6, there's a couple things that I wanted to revisit, as hinted at by the title here. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring us over to our live scene so we can all see the notebook that we'll work on. Whoosh, there we go. So yeah, we had previously kind of worked a bit on fleshing out the Drow and their culture within my homebrew world. And it's relevant because based on the sort of campaign outline that we've given ourselves to kind of work with, the next step for our players in this campaign that we're writing is that they would be heading towards this Drow society that exists within the Siski Forest up there. Maybe I can pull up a map just so we can look at it and kind of get a sense of what we're working on here. Let me get Wonder Draft going here. Pull up our Q5 map, which is where this campaign takes place. There we go. So we've got our forested area here up to the north, and we've we kind of have outlined that our players will be heading our players will be heading towards the city of Ashran Nalor here, which is within the lore of our world here is a formerly elven city that has been now kind of overtaken by the Drow in the absence of the elves. And we had kind of like the basic principle of how things are going to go here is I'm content with, and I want to build upon that. But when I look back at kind of what I had thought up of in terms of the details of sort of this of this Drow society and how it operates, I'm just kind of frankly dissatisfied with what I've come up with so far, and so I want to revisit that and kind of make some edits, which is, you know, that's an important part of the process for writing a campaign. Because previously we had I had kind of talked about, I had invented this lore where they were I forget the name of the goddess, but this lore where they were sort of collectively worshippers of a spider-like goddess. which there's a certain poignancy about that, considering that I do want the atmosphere of this to feel very much to the players like they're caught in a web, right? And so there's kind of an interesting, if a bit obvious, if a bit on the nose, poignancy about it, that I don't mind, but I think we can do better. I think we can come up with something a lot more interesting, and something that's a bit, like I say, a little less obvious maybe, because the concept of like dark, creepy forest drow intermingling with spiders and everything just feels a little obvious. You know, I keep using the word, but I think it's there. It feels a little obvious, and I want this to be a little less plain, and I want to be able to have a bit more fun with it. So that's kind of what I want to do today. And I just want to think in broad terms about what the culture of this cult, get it, culture. Oh gosh, I crack myself up. I want to revisit this cult and the culture around this cult, and just kind of think about what would make sense and what would fit for this, and what would really serve what I'm trying to achieve for this chapter with my players, is kind of what I'm after here. So, yeah. So I pulled up a blank faction template here, so we can start writing stuff down. And if we fill it out, great. If not, I'm not super worried about it, because I feel like as we're creating our actual chapter, right, when we get to that part, a lot of this will kind of be evolving and changing as we go, because it will be a fairly sizable chapter for people to be going through. So I think yeah. So okay. So basically, the what I do know that I want to achieve with this is I want to achieve a sense of, well, there's a couple things that I want to achieve. First off, I know I want the Drow and the cult to, as far as the players are aware, operate entirely from the shadows, to the point that players are unlikely to see a Drow ever at all while going through this. I like the idea of the puppet masters, so to speak, remaining behind the curtain for almost the entirety of whatever we put our players through. That's kind of the first core idea I want to stick to when thinking about this cult and how they will operate. Another thing that I really want to focus on is I do want to keep the concept of like making sure the players feel trapped in a web. I just don't know if I want to do so through use of like the obvious angles of spider beings. Because it's like I say, I think I can do better than that. I think I can do better than the low-hanging fruit of, oh, they're trapped in a web and it's spider motif. Like I just think we can do better. I think we can do better, and I want to chase that. So if we're going to, if we're gonna do that, I think the best thing we can do is stray away from sticking almost primarily to spidery monsters, and instead what I want to do is I want to try and explore and think about if it makes sense for this cult, within the context of how Drow came to be and how they operate within my homebrew world. I want to think about whether or not it makes sense for them to achieve what they're after through, say, magic means versus more practical means. And I think that's something that is going to take a lot of thought and a lot of exploration to really understand and know. And I think we'll kind of get there. How do the Drow originate in the world? So the Drow in my world originate very similarly to the way the Duergar do, in that when the unhinging occurred, which was, for anyone who's uninitiated with my world, The unhinging was a cataclysmic event that happened a couple thousand years ago, in which all of the different realms, ethereal, elemental, mortal, all of those realms were kind of thrown into chaos through various rips and tears in reality that connected them where there should not have been connections. The result of that being all kinds of creatures being displaced, creatures from one realm being sucked into another realm or shoved into another realm, and as well as from these openings between realms, this sort of magical radiation causing weird, chaotic changes in the world and to the creatures caught in this sort of like wave of magical radiation. And so the Drow are the result of tears being ripped open around elven societies, and elves, either by choice or by mistake, not managing to escape the danger in time, and then them slowly being corrupted by this magical radiation. And that's kind of where the Drow originates. Same, like I say, same as the Duergar. So they're a fairly young, fairly new race of just sort of twisted, warped elves. Essentially, it's kind of like a more natural occurring Uruk-hai situation, right? Where they're kind of the result of I'm not gonna say intentional, because that's not quite it, but they're the result of like tinkering and mutation and stuff like that. And that's kind of where the Drow come from in my world. And so because of that, I've kind of been thinking about this idea of the Drow perhaps like worshiping the tears and the rips that exist within the forest that they live in as sort of their creator, right? So it's like they kind of worship the tears as their god of sorts, or god or goddess. And so they sort of like harvest any creatures that are the result of either coming through those portals that have been opened, or that are like warped, mutated creatures from that radiation. They sort of like collect up and worship those creatures as gifts from the tears, and then they offer up sacrifices of, whether it's like farm animals, captured travelers, whatever. They offer up gifts to the tears by basically bringing people and kind of forcing them to undergo mutations through being close to the portals, or even just flat out shoving them through as sort of a sacrifice, similar to how a fictional cult may make sacrifices to a volcano or something along those lines. Is kind of the idea that I have. And so rather than them having like a patron saint, a patron god or goddess, instead they just sort of collectively worship this element within the world, which is the tears. And so because we're in a world now also where the world and all of the effects of the unhinging are slowly starting to resolve over time, I kind of have this thought of them being perhaps in a borderline desperate situation where they're really trying everything they can, and perhaps getting more aggressive with their rituals and their sacrifices and everything like that in an attempt to appease what they view as a god that is slowly abandoning them. And so I kind of had this idea of using that as a vehicle to drive the broad idea that I've had, where players will, as they're going about what will eventually be Chapter 6 of this campaign, as they're going about their goal of trying to find the one of the keys to the Hall of Wisdom within the abandoned elven society, the process of going into this now Drow village and finding the key will be very easy. Like they'll complete that within the first act of the whole chapter, right? They'll go in there and maybe have to face a couple weird creatures that have made up their homes in this Drow society, and they'll get in there and they'll find the key and they'll be like, great, we did it. And then like sort of metaphorically turn around and everything is just going to immediately escalate from there, right? Where they are like, hey, we got this key, and suddenly the remaining parts of this chapter are basically them just going through, you know, like a murder house horror type of situation, right? Where there's like Drow acting in the shadows, not overtly, but basically pulling the strings of these creatures that they would have maybe like harvested from these rips and tears, right? And using said creatures as a way to sort of trap and capture the players in this area, and eventually sort of force them to be the next sacrifices to the tears and rips in reality that they worship. Is sort of the idea that I have. And so I want to try and figure out exactly what the structure of this cult is, so that way once we start putting in details, we can sort of have a big picture that we have in mind, and we can sort of feed players small views through small peepholes, through portals, about what this bigger picture is. So as they're going and trying to survive this horror show that we're going to put them through, they can sort of get an idea of what is going on, and maybe eventually sort of solve the puzzle and the mystery as they're trying to escape. Is the idea that I have, and I just, you know, I really want to spend some time just sort of like today's stream might be a lot more thought and discussion based than me actually physically writing stuff, because I feel like right now I'm in a very brainstorming state of trying to understand that. And how I want this cult to function as a vehicle for driving the campaign as we proceed, which is kind of great for me, because I have the tendency to be very talkative and get distracted from writing anyway. So the fact that I'm not expecting myself to actually physically write a whole lot of stuff it just plays to my strengths right there. Or at least plays to my, well, I don't know if you'd call it a strength. I guess plays to my tendencies is maybe the more accurate way of describing it. But yeah, that's kind of the rough idea that I'm beginning with, and I want to sort of build from there. So the cult is so that's kind of what the faction is. That's what the cult is. And I'm trying to think. So the first thing, I kind of like starting with a title, because again, it can always be edited if we stray from what their title is. But I always like kind of putting a title, because that sort of helps kind of guide things as we go along, right? It kind of gives us a starting point to kind of go from. And ooh, you got something for me. Okay, hold on. Let me see what you got here. Scared lead because they are the most holy within the experience. Okay, all right. May have a hand or other limbs missing from plunging them into the tears. Mutant appendages, telekinetic powers to make up for the loss. Part of the cult is based on a pit area. Mutant Drow or other unworthy to keep their sanity during the process. Okay. All right, I like that. I think there's some stuff there that we can use and massage to fit what we're looking for. I like that. I really like that. I really like the idea of leaders of this cult having been, like, sort of basically victims of the tears, right? Like, I kind of like that idea, where it's like whether they were forced to and sort of made, like, baptized, in a sense, to become their deities. Like, they were. It was like almost in a ritualistic process to free their inner holy selves or something like that, some weird twisted thing. And what would be interesting about that is if maybe that's what the motivation is for capturing and ushering the players into this situation. Like, perhaps this cult views the players like 5 strong warriors that could help lead the faction. Perhaps they see them as sort of unbaptized champions of the cult. And so really the cult, like, the way they see it is they're doing the most honorable thing they could to the players, and they don't understand why the players are fighting this, right? And so it's like they're trying to make them they're trying to make them pure within their mind, because they've just kind of gone crazed or something. It's kind of what my first thought about that is, and I like that idea. I think that would be a really interesting motivation, and it would be really fun to sort of sprinkle in clues so players can kind of see exactly what's going on and have this weird understanding that, like, oh, we don't want this and this is going to be horrible, but the way they view this is that they are trying to make us, in their view, more than what we are, right? And you can kind of present that to players, and I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing for them to grapple with in some way, shape, or form. And then the idea of filled with mutants or unworthy or anything like that, I kind of like that idea, but I kind of like the idea of them being used as like fodder, or alternatively, I like the idea like where there's like this area that's filled with them, and that's like one of the parts is players kind of find themselves in a dungeon or a building or some sort that has those types of unworthy creatures in it, and they're like trying to survive that, and these unworthy creatures are maybe like primarily misunderstood, and so the players are like thinking that they're being attacked by monstrosities, but maybe these are monstrosities who sort of recognize what has happened to them and recognize that something is wrong, and they're actually just trying to get help. And so it'd be kind of an interesting thing if like you make that so that whenever players encounter creatures, like the battle, like just try and subtly, like never actually say it outright or anything like that, but subtly the battle is the result of like players attacking first, right? You make it so that maybe these creatures will swarm the players and surround them and make it appear threatening, because they're sort of half deranged, mutated creatures of some sort, but the players just kind of see it as them being swarmed, and so maybe always, we just make sure that the creatures never attack until the players have attacked first. And I think that'd be an interesting thing just to see if players catch on to that and maybe adjust their approaches to things because of that. I like that idea too. I really like that idea. So we could like sort of have maybe an important location or something like that to these people, be some sort of prison area, right? We can have that as well as whatever shrines and anything we're going to give to the players. I like that idea a lot. There's a lot of good ideas here. There's so many good ideas here, and I'm really excited to just like explore these and flesh them out here. Yeah, I like a lot of this. So just for naming of these people, like trying to think about the cult. So first off, trying to think about a title. The first challenge is always, do we give them a title based on what they call themselves or based on what everyone else would call them, right? Because everyone else would call them those crazy Drow, but the Drow would probably call themselves the church of the cleansing way or something like that, right? They would call themselves that. And it would just be like this weird thing where, because from their perspective, they're just cleansing and trying to become pure in some way, shape, or form. It would be kind of interesting too. Like, it'd be kind of interesting if we kind of took an angle of perhaps the like leader or the boss is maybe one of these tears, just like because it's magic and we can do whatever we want and things can get really crazy. Maybe one of the tears, what it is the tear itself has become sentient in a way. And so like the tear is like, it's actually a living thing, like it's got a consciousness that is actively encouraging the Drow to do these things. Right? I don't know. I feel like that idea would be a tough one to work, but maybe we could do something. Church of the Truest Sight. Yeah, that could be good. You could just call it like Church of True Sight or something like that. Although, I guess the only thing that I worry about with that is it might be a bit. I guess it doesn't matter ultimately, but it kind of invokes a vision of like there being some sort of vision type of thing involved in it, and I don't want to use the idea of like, oh, maybe you only see things one way because of, you haven't been purified or anything like that. I kind of want it to just be like all of it is nice and literal, right? Like you are seeing these creatures, and it's not a matter of like, oh, you don't have the true sight or anything like that. It's just like, no, these creatures have, like, you know, for the cult would say, no, these creatures have been baptized, like they are now their purest form. And so that's the only reason why I would want to stay away from using the term sight in the title, just because I don't want to give the impression that it's somehow about seeing things more truly. It's not about seeing the true pure way. It's about being the truly pure. Is kind of what this cult is about. This is kind of a weird stream. Now that I'm thinking about it, it sounds kind of like I'm just building my own cult, doesn't it? Like, it's almost like I'm brainstorming how to be the next Scientology or something. Like, this is gonna be an awkward one for someone who doesn't understand what I'm working on to come in the middle of. The purified or the cleansed. Yeah, we could just, that's true. You could just like Facebook it and get rid of, like, you know, the or something like that, and just go like with you know, get rid of the church part of it, and just go with instead of the church of the purified, just do it like the purified. It's not a bad idea. I don't know though. I do like the idea of it being like the church of this, because I like the idea of it being just this really bastardized version of a religion, right? Where it's like most religions, at least in doctrine, claim to be about peace or something like that. Like, you know, this one will claim to be all about purification, but it is just like the most bastardized version of purification you can imagine. Like something just next level is the one reason why I really like the idea of the church. I'm just gonna put down the church. Wow, the church of the purified way, maybe, or something like that. The church of the purified. You could even, like, you can make it an even, because like I feel like just the way we use language nowadays, by saying something as definitive as the purified, like, it already invokes a thought of like, these guys have a lot of hubris, and that's not a good start. Like, it's almost a misnomer in and of itself, which is great. So I'm gonna leave it at that, but I don't know that I'm convinced that I want to keep it like that forever. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. So I want to quick intro about the faction here. I'm gonna say, let's see here, a faction. We'll say this is a cult, cult created by the Drow, as a result of their collective insanity brought on by the corruption from the interplanar interplanar tears. One thing too that'll be interesting about this is, like, we'll have to decide if this is going to be just like a specific cult that they happen to kind of come into contact with, or if this is like the entirety of the Drow. And that's kind of an interesting thought. But I feel like we'll get to that. I don't know that I want to flesh that one out at this exact moment, because I almost feel like deciding that one will almost come from as we're writing chapter 6, because that's what this is in preparation for. As we're writing chapter 6 of our campaign, I feel like understanding that part of it will kind of come as we plan out the other parts of this world and sort of understand how it all shakes out. So we'll get there. I don't know that I'm gonna worry about that at this moment. This is a cult created by the Drow as a result of their collective insanity brought on by the corruption of the interplanar tears. They worship the tears as though they were a part of some sort of collective consciousness that forms an omnipotent omnipotent. There it is. An omnipotent deity. Deity. There it is. Yeah, I like that idea. I really like that idea where it's just like they worship the tears themselves. Like I say, it's kind of like it's kind of like a version of, you know, worshiping the volcanoes and sacrificing to them. I worship a stale potato chip. That's. I mean, there might be one or two of them. Their brains are pretty muddled these days. There might be a couple of them there. Those are the rejects, the failures of the purification process that are kind of kept to the side. Even for the insane Drow, they're like, no, dude, that's not how it works. Because I like the idea too, especially of that, because like I don't know that the concept of like a potato chip exists in fantasy world. So basically, to them, it's just like some weird scrap of potato skin. It's just like it's even extra weird because of it. Let's see here. Some sort of collective consciousness that forms an omnipotent deity. They offer impure beings, and we'll say those not impacted by the influences of the rips between planes, and collect up the mutated and lost creatures that the rips produce as holy and purified beings. And I do like the idea. I do like the idea of building off of that like those who reach higher status within this cult earn the privilege to themselves be further influenced and like you know, sacrifice themselves like willingly into these things and make themselves even more corrupted than just being standard Drow. I really like that idea. I'm gonna just write that down. The leaders being the most holy of individuals. Leaders being, well, actually, let's just grammatically poor here. Leaders of this cult are the most holy of individuals who have earned the privilege. Privilege. Who've earned the right. I'm gonna be lazy about it today. Rather than trying to remember how to write and be a good writer, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the easy way out and use poor language choice. Who have the leaders of this cult are the most holy of individuals who have earned the right to be baptized in the magical radiation from the tears themselves. Yeah, I like that. I really like that idea a lot. Yeah, you would think. I feel like the hard part about potato chips is being able to have knives sharp and acute enough to slice them consistently, and it being worth the effort is what I feel like is probably the hang up there. Okay, let's see here. So this is a cult created by the Drow as a result of their collective insanity brought on by the corruption from interplanar tears. They worship the tears as though they were a part of some sort of collective consciousness that forms an omnipotent deity. They offer impure beings, those not impacted by the influences of the rips between planes, and collect up the mutated and lost creatures that the rips produce as holy and purified beings. Leaders of this cult are the most holy of individuals who have earned the right to be baptized. I'm going to put quotes in baptized. It would be like, it's just anyone who's not familiar with my world, being baptized in these interplanar tears would be like being baptized by the elephant's foot in Chernobyl, right? Like that's what's happening. Like people are actively subjecting themselves to like horribly damaging radiation, in the belief that doing so will make them a more pure being. Which just sort of emphasizes the madness of this, which I think is good, and I think that'll be a really good setup for kind of presenting this area, because like there's going to be nothing sane about what happens to players. Like I say, it's going to start off with them just like waltzing into town, a town that they think is empty, right? And they just kind of waltz into town, find the find the key they're looking for, and then as they try to leave, that's when everything like just completely falls apart, which I really like, because like so far the first 2 keys that they've been trying to find, right? The first 2 of the 4 keys they've been trying to find have been like go through all these tremendous trials, and then at the end of it you will find what you're looking for, right? Like it's followed that standard treasure pathway. And instead now it's kind of the opposite. It's like they think they might get like a freebie, and they're like, oh, we just found it. Like, great, that works. And then they turn around and like, the proverbial gates have been shut on them, and they no longer have their way to get home. I mean, Valexian, I can't speak to what the motivations were of primitive societies. I can only try and explain what was and wasn't, I'm afraid, and I do not know the motivations. All right, let's see here. So, okay, I like that as our basic premise. I think that's great. The history of this cult is going to be pretty easy to figure out, namely because like there is no pre-unhinging history. They are a result of the unhinging. So we can just put and this cult is a direct result of the effects of the unhinging. So yeah, we can just do that. Oh yeah. I like that idea. Ooh, I like that idea of them having like just in general. Okay. Oh wait, let's see. What is the translation? We see through the veil of reality, door between the worlds, plunge through the depths of space. Seek the truth. We are baptized in fire and time. Yeah. Something like that could definitely be really handy, and that could be a fun tool just to present players with lore and to give them clues about about like what is happening to them and what is the deal with this place, right? Is if we give them like a cipher of some sort, like bit by bit, and like those are some of the clues that they find, and like perhaps hidden in those clues is some sort of like explanation about what's going on, right? So it's like, maybe we give them the motto, like we give them their motto like that, their calling card, their chant or whatever it is, and slowly give them pieces of translation to that, and then they use and then as they're sort of like deciphering it, they can then use that cipher that they're sort of slowly getting pieces of through figuring out what that motto is, and then they use that to also be able to translate other things they'll find, like various like religious texts, or like journals left by some of the beings or something like that. And that would be really fun, and that would be a really cool way to present them stuff, especially because, like I say, one of the things that I really want to do with this is I really want the Drow to completely operate in the shadows. Like, I want them to, they themselves are not interacting with the players. They are always out of sight, and like if players catch glimpses, it's just that, it's glimpses, like a pair of eyes that like disappear behind a curtain or something like that, or they're outside and they think they hear footsteps out in the trees, and they look, but the whatever it was is already gone, and the only creatures that they deal with are these mutated homunculi that the Drow have collected as their holy beings, right? They're like holy warriors or whatever, for their holy army. And like that's what the players are dealing with. So they're dealing with all of these horrors, all of these like horrible, twisted, nasty creatures, and it's just like this horror show. more than anything else, and they never actually see anything else. Like, I really like that. Really like that. Dwarf, the Drow worship a barely functioning warforged swing only binary. That's actually kind of a cool idea. I feel like that would be a more interesting. I feel like that's an interesting idea that would work really well for a not horror setting. Like, if I weren't going for a horror type of setting for this chapter, I think that would be a really good idea, and I think that could actually be really fun. Where it's like you could that could be, we could use that for chapter 7, right? Once our players, because our players have been underground facing horrible monsters, and then they're going into this forest facing a horrible, like, horror style midsummer cult type of thing, right? And so we're gonna need some levity. So it would be actually kind of fun if they encounter a small tribe that worships basically what it is it's the Ewoks worshiping C-3PO is essentially what it is. I feel like that would be a really good levity based one. I think that would be a really good way to lighten the mood a little bit after having 2 really dark chapters, because players are really going to need that at that point in time. Put that one in the back pocket. I like that. I feel like a Warforged wouldn't want to use meat armor. I feel like a Warforged would. I mean, like, you know, I guess if you're just using the meat shield concept of just like, yeah, they're the fodder. Although I think it would be even funnier if, like, the Warforged regains consciousness and it, like, is just like a C-3PO translation bot, and it's just, like, really confused, and it's like, what did I just wake up to? What's going on here? I think I'd rather just go home than keep dealing with this. Being worshipped by, you know, like a small, just like a small tribal group of like Harangun or something like that, right? The little rabbit folk that are just like, you know, they're, for some reason they've attached to this Warforged, and he's like, no, this ain't me, man. I think that'd be really funny. Like I say, that'd be really good for some levity in there. But yeah, getting back to this, so the cult pre-unhinging, there's not really anything. You know, they're the direct result of the unhinging, and so to give some history here, and that might help us kind of really iron out a little bit of how this thing works if we think about the history of how it came to be. So we can kind of say, so we can maybe do something. Blood draining moss. I've not been introduced to that formally, but I can certainly imagine. We'll get there. We'll definitely be getting. I don't know if we'll get there today, but we definitely need to, like, come up with a collection of horrific creatures to chuck at our players. No doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. We're gonna need that. We're gonna need that for sure. But let's see here. So the history of how they came to be. I kind of want to just, like, open up with a little something along the lines of, like, the appearance of a cult that worships the changes caused by the tears makes a fair amount of sense when considering the origin of the Drow, of the Drow themselves, being creatures born of the magical effects of the unhinging on the elves of the forest, who could not escape. So being creatures born of the magical effects of the unhinging on the elves of the forest who could not escape. I'm trying to think about how to finish the sentence without making it too much of a run-on sentence. Which, I mean, is kind of irrelevant because we can always just massage it and change it later. So, okay, being creatures born of the magical effects, unhinging the elves of the forest who could not escape, lends itself well to the idea of worshipping these tears as a creator of sorts. That's a really bad sentence, but I don't know how to fix it without starting fresh. We're just going to leave it there. How long has it been since the unhinging? The unhinging happened a couple thousand years ago. It happened a couple thousand years ago. When it first happened, it was a very cataclysmic event. And over time, so like an analogy I use a lot to describe the unhinging is that like it's if you imagine all of the if you imagine all of the different planes of reality as like layers of water and oil and sand and rock and stuff in a single jar, the unhinging is if someone took that jar and shook it up and mixed everything. And then over time, just like what happened with that jar, things are starting to kind of percolate and separate back into their layers. And so after a couple thousand years, we're kind of at like a midpoint of that percolation happening. So it's been a while, and things are calmer, and that's why there's a lot more adventuring out into the world happening, because it's slowly becoming a bit safer to do so. And that's like I say, that's kind of one of the motivations I want to have for these Drow in this cult, is that they fear that they're being abandoned by their god, right? Because these tears are closing up and becoming less powerful, and so they want to continue to make sacrifices, like larger sacrifices, more intense sacrifices, for the sake of appeasing these tears. Let's see here. Remove restores max HP after a long rest. They'll tear flesh with it, but a gentle shower will safely move it. Interesting. All right, that's an interesting creature. That's an interesting thing that we might be able to make use of that. Yeah, that would be really good for like a trap setup or something like that, like a really subtle trap that players might encounter right at the beginning, and then over time it it becomes the sinister nature of it becomes more obvious or something like that. That'd be kind of an interesting one. I like that idea. But let's see here. So yeah, that's how long ago it happened. And so I think there's still some stuff to massage around exactly how they operate within that context, but I suppose we'll get there, right? So okay, let's see here. The appearance of the cult worships changes caused by the tears makes a fair amount of sense when considering the origin of the Drow themselves. When creatures born of the magical effect of the unhinging on the elves cannot escape the lands. Okay, wait, hold on. Cannot escape. They would have a natural perspective of the tears being their quote creator. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so building off of that, so I'm trying to think about it. You know, we've kind of talked about the idea of like the more messed up ones being the more holy, but the one thing I'm having trouble with that one is trying to figure out how that lends itself to like motivations and stuff, and trying to keep this like a Drow cult. So I'm wondering more so if it's like, if we should stick with the idea that you mentioned, that was discussed, where it's like the more horrifying they are, and the more horrifying the creature is, the less of a leader it's seen, and more of like a fodder type of creature it's seen. So like players are like forced to deal with the most horrifying of all of these creatures, and the Drow themselves are like, they see themselves as the most pure, right? So any sort of creature that becomes like a Drow version of itself, right, is like, that's the most pure. So they would like see a dwarf turned Duragar and maybe think of them as being like a pure being of some sort, or maybe it would even see them as like being like false idols or something like that. I don't know. But I kind of like that idea. I kind of like the idea of keeping it that way, so it's like the Drow view themselves as like higher beings, and they send in all of the monstrosities, all the homunculi, to deal with the interlopers and capture them, because they see the Drow see themselves as being above that kind of work, and that's why they keep themselves isolated and away from the players. Is sort of the idea that I have. And the other thing too is I think I'm settling on the idea, I think that this cult is not the entirety of the Drow, it's just one small faction of the Drow, is kind of what I'm thinking for this, because a lot of the history and the interactions with, namely with the Drow of the High Doom Mountains that players will have already encountered, I've sort of already established a history, and I want to keep the history where the Drow themselves are sort of a conquesting race, and they are kind of at odds with the Drow, or with the Duergar, over that. And like this cult, I feel like the way we're describing them is they actually wouldn't have an issue with cult. So I actually kind of am starting to see this cult as being more of a fringe group, like a side faction of the Drow. That like the Drow themselves are kind of like, no, we don't want to have anything to do with you. This isn't really what we're trying to accomplish. You guys can go do your thing, but we're gonna worry about our thing. And so this is just like a small compound that just by pure happenstance is the place that has the key that players are looking for. And so they're just kind of accidentally in here. And the other thing that would be fun about that is it would kind of create an interesting, it would open up a little bit the opportunity to have players maybe interact with some like normal Drow that are significantly less, driven by trying to torture and torment the players. It could open up some interesting things like that. So I think I want to keep this as just like a small splinter group of Drow. Result the most cleanliness. And they judge the smelly adventurer's heart. That would work really well for the non-cult ones. I feel like the culty ones are not all that concerned about it one way or another. But that is kind of an interesting idea for the larger race of the Drow as a faction within the world. It's not a bad idea. Let's see here. So the appearance of the cult as their creator. So let's go ahead and add in there the Drow at large do not worship the Tears. Rather, this is rather. Let me format that a bit better. Rather, this is a fringe group of fanatics that are seen by the rest of the Drow as insane and best left alone. And actually what we'll say, what I want to do here is I'm going to, crying out loud, we're going to keep that as the same thing. Let's say, however, the Drow at large do not worship the Tears. Rather, this is a fringe group of fanatics seen. Okay, there we go. That's not the best paragraph I've ever written in my life, but it'll do. As the Drow were forming and coming to be as a race in the early days of the unhinging, a small collective began to try and study the Rips to understand exactly what the nature of them was and how they came to be. But the close contact to the magical radiation. Boy, oh boy, radiation. There we go. The close contact to the magical radiation swiftly began warping their minds. Their minds? No, their minds. And inducing a collective insanity. Many of them began to hear voices and attributed these voices to the Tears themselves, as though these cursed portals between realms. Oops. As though these cursed portals between realms were sentient beings all together. Oops. I guess it's just supposed to be all together. There we go. When they tried to recruit other Drow to their way of thinking, most were actually. I'm gonna switch that around. Some were intrigued. I'm gonna sit here and fight with trying to remember how to spell intrigued. Some were intrigued, while others, well, actually not others, while most were unconvinced. Over time, these individuals were determined. Wowee, I am just not on my typing game today. I am sorry for all of the goof ups and retries I keep needing to do. It's rough going today here. Holy cow. Let's see here. Over time, these individuals were determined to spread their beliefs and grow their number of followers. Eventually, well, not eventually, we'll say slowly, their numbers did increase. But even so, they remained a fringe group that were ignored or even shunned by the other Drow, who felt they had more important things to do than let their brains, we'll just say minds, their minds rot at the hands of the rips between realms. We'll say eventually the disagreements and intensity from these worshippers reached a point where societal friction made it eventually the disagreements and intensity from these worshippers reached a point where societal friction, we'll say, encouraged them to separate and create their own faction of Drow. We'll say in doing so, they found a small abandoned village with a small shrine they could use for worship and ritual, and that was in close proximity to the tears, so that they may better interact with the object of their worship. We just kind of say that, and that kind of gives us the history about, like, leading up to why they're where they are and what they're doing there. So I think that's good. I think that's just fine. Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's a good vague history. It leaves a lot of room for us to kind of add some more details as we're going. So I think that's a really good place to start. Um, I'm gonna take just like a 2-minute break really quickly, just so I can run to the bathroom and refill my beverage. I'm actually really having a lot of fun with this. You guys have a lot of really awesome ideas, and I want to keep hearing them. Because I think already I have a much clearer idea of what I want to be doing with this cult and how they're going to fit into the campaign project. So you guys are incredibly helpful, and I really want to keep hearing your ideas. So I'm just going to run to the bathroom really quickly, and then I'll be back, and we've got like another hour that we can keep working on this stuff. So keep bringing your ideas, and I will look forward to continuing to read them once I go make pity whistles. So sit tight. I'll leave you here with some chill tunes, and I will be back in just a moment or two. Thanks for your patience. Boy, I really came back in here with a bang, didn't I? Hit my chair on the desk and caused it all to shake. Don't worry, there's no earthquake. We don't get many of those around my part of the world. But all right, I'm back. Thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate it. My bladder appreciates it, and now I am ready to keep going on this. So yeah, no, this is really cool. I actually really like this cult already. I think there's still a lot to work out for it. But I think the big thing is I really like the idea that we've kind of landed on. Like the two things that I really like about this are I like the idea that they worship the inner planar tears themselves, and I also really like the idea that like the homunculi and everything and all the monsters and stuff are the results of them trying to like purify and like create what they view as the most perfect beings. Like, in essence, they're trying to create their own people. Like, they're trying to do that, and they kind of just keep creating these monsters that they instead use as like homunculi, and also the idea that they collect up the creatures that have been impacted by the tear as like beings from God or something like that, is sort of the idea that I have, or that the idea that we've come up with that I really like. I have a lot of like affection for that idea already. I think this is a really cool cult. Is I think there's like a certain complexity, and I think what's really nice about it is there's definitely a lot of inconsistencies about like their doctrine, but like I really like that because it's a cult that's born of insanity, right? So it's not gonna make sense, and there are going to be all kinds of logical holes in what they are doing and trying to achieve and all that kind of stuff. I really like that. Sorry, Nightbot is putting the hammer down on the caps. Nightbot has the enthusiasm, but it sometimes doesn't have the nuance to allow actual people. It's there to make sure that spam bots don't come in. Oh, you're good. You're good. No worries, my friend. No worries. I just always know that because like it just it like on my end when I'm looking at my monitor, like Nightbot just like freaks out and it gives me like 4 messages and it's all like, we're doing this, don't do this, and I'm like, whoa, Nightbot, calm down, man. Like it's like I feel like Nightbot is the one security guard that's like way too over enthusiastic and like thinks of themselves as being like some sort of sheriff or something like that. And so like even though they're a security guard and their job is to make sure that students don't walk on the grass, like they treat their job as though they're like constantly investigating a crime. Like I feel like that's what Nightbot is. It's just like it's got the spirit, man, but it needs to just cool down. But at any rate, welcome, average Magic player. You know what? I have a hard time believing you're just average. I feel like you must be special in your own way, just as we all are. But welcome. Glad to have you here. I'm glad to have you here, even if Nightbot has its eye on you. Oh my goodness gracious! It's so funny. It's like almost counterproductive, because it causes more of a distraction than if it just lets it in. I might have to change that setting. I don't know. At the same time, it does make things amusing. Oh boy. Oh, okay. You got your own stuff. I'll have to. You should. Yeah. I'll have to think about checking that out at some point. Nice. Well done. Okay. Let's see here. So we've got kind of the history of our cult here. We've got like the history thrown in here. And what I kind of want to do is so we've got this section for leaders and everything, but I actually want to save that. I don't know that I want to worry about that today, because I feel like since this cult is going to be so heavily emphasized, it's going to be a really big part of the next chapter when we get to it. Because of that, I kind of want to save working on the leadership until I kind of have a clearer idea of what I need from the cult from a gameplay standpoint goes, since this cult is kind of being created to service the gameplay ideas that I have. So instead, I think I'd rather go down here and I want to just work on their mission a little bit, because I feel like kind of understanding their mission and what their goals are and everything like that is going to be a bit more important for setting up the foundation of how we're going to use these guys when the time comes. So I wanna work on that. So let's see here. All right. So yeah. You should. You know what you should do? You should just get connected with the Discord server and like drop it in there, so that way I can remember it. That'll help me remember it later, because I will do my best to remember, but my schedule is so busy, there's a good chance I'll forget about it until like 15, months from now, and I'll be like, oh yeah, there was that one thing. So you should just hook up with the Discord server that I got going on there, or at least find me through Discord and like share it there. That'll make it a bit easier. So let's see here. Okay, so mission. I want to talk about their. So we're gonna start with doing like overall goals here. I kind of want to open up the discussion about their mission, so to speak, with that. So let's see here. So the overall there it is. Overall goal of this faction is rather simple and straightforward. They wish to create an army of sorts. Oh, raid's coming in. Oh my goodness. Things are getting crazy around here. Ah, dang it. And now I'm seeing that I forgot to switch my freaking alerts over, and now it's gonna bother me. Gosh dang it. It bothers me so much when I forget to do that, when I forget to switch them between different things. Alright, hold on. I wanna fix this. Oh my gosh, I get so mad at myself when I do that. Because this is the thing. It matters literally to no one else except for me. I'm the only one who cares, and it still tries to be insane because it's all gotta match. Dang it! If it doesn't match, it's like wearing polka dots. It's like wearing polka dot socks with striped shirts, and it just doesn't work. That's me insane. How's it going, Shades? Thank you for the raid. Welcome everyone. Pile in. We're working on inventing a cult that I'm going to use. So we just yesterday we finished up the a chapter. Yeah. Always by the bots. We've already had an incident today with Nightbot throwing a fit. Hey, Pengus King, thank you for following. And now we can see the matching things. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh boy. No, we've already had incidents with Nightbot being very enthusiastic but not very discerning. Oh my goodness gracious. That's it. Let me catch up and make sure got everything. But thank you for the follow. Ooh, ideas for figures with the cult. That's awesome. I will. You know what I can do? I'll take a peek at those. I'll take a peek at those, and we can sort of bring those to the table on Friday. Especially if you can stop in Friday during writing, then we can bring those and we can start using those to start putting the foundations of the actual chapter that we're going to use them in. So we can do that. For getting verification, as long as you if you just put, like, verification is just me verifying. If you just put a message in there about what your although now that I know you've already told me what your Discord is, I'll verify you and I'll get you verified there. So you'll be good to go there. But okay, what was I saying? Something about a cult, I guess. Like, that's what we're working. So we're creating a cult. We just finished up chapter 5 for the long form campaign we've been working on stream for a long time, and chapter 6 is going to feature heavily a Drow cult that our players are going to have to deal with. And so we're trying to sort of create we're building the cult itself here, so that way we can have this cult established and ready to go for us when we need it, as we're building building the campaign itself. And the basic idea behind this cult, kind of what we've worked on and come up with so far, is there's a small faction of the Drow. So this is all within my homebrew world. And the Drow themselves are, my homebrew world kind of revolves around, it's post-apocalyptic. There was an event called the Unhinging, bunch of tears in between all the different planes, ethereal, elemental, mortal, all of that stuff. A bunch of planes ripped open, caused a whole bunch of chaos, magical radiation, blah, 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 all kinds of crazy stuff happened. Part of the result of that was the Drow were created, and this small faction of the Drow now worship these rips as like a creator. They sort of like believe that these tears are in some way, shape, or form sentient, and so they worship the tears. They kind of are collecting up the all of the weird, twisted creatures that have been created by these tears as sort of like a menagerie of like holy creatures. Even though they, as Drow, view themselves as being like the most holy, because they're like they're these holy creatures that were created by the tears and then gifted with like higher intelligence and stuff like that. So it's like we're basically just trying to build this cult, and the concept of how this cult is going to be used is that the Drow themselves operate from the shadows. So our players are going to enter this area where there's this cult, and they're going to be trying to find they're going to like be on the search for a key, which is part of the larger campaign, and I won't worry about going into the details of that because it's not super relevant to what we're working on today. But our players go in there, find what they're looking for, and then as they're trying to leave, basically these Drow from the shadows start using their army of these like horror, these horror fodder creatures as a way to sort of trap and capture the players and use them as eventually, like, they're basically going to try and usher the players towards one of these tears so that they can use the players as a sacrifice to the tears. Because over time, these tears in reality are starting to slowly close themselves up over time. It's just like nature healing itself, essentially. And so this cult views that as being like them being sort of abandoned by their god. And so they're trying to appease the god by like offering sacrifices and stuff. So basically the players are going to be going through this horror house of being trapped and things just like slowly going more and more off the rails as they're basically just trying to leave and go home. Right? It's got a very Resident Evil feel, I think, is kind of where I'm sort of subconsciously taking a lot of influence from, or maybe it's not subconsciously now that I've acknowledged it. But anyway, it's got a very Resident Evil to it, where it's like you go in there like, and things are almost mundane when you first show up, right? Like you show up at this location, and it just seems like, oh yeah, it's just like an abandoned hospital or whatever. And then the longer you spend in this area, the more insane everything gets, and that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve here. And I want to do it through this cult where it's like, you know, the Drow themselves are the puppet masters, and they're sort of creating as players go. We're pre-writing it, right? So it's like the illusion of as players go. They're creating more and more traps to just try and like, you know, force players to go through this horrific series of trials that will eventually result in a handful of them being offered up to this interplanar tear as a sacrifice. You know, not entirely dissimilar from, you know, a tribe that would make sacrifices to a volcano or, you know, to the ocean or whatever, right? Is kind of the idea that we're going for here. So we've kind of come up with this history for them, and I'm trying to like articulate the details of what their mission is. Because if we understand what they're trying to achieve, adding details into our campaign for interactions, since they're not going to directly interact with the players, but as we're designing the campaign itself, we understand what the goals are of this faction, then it becomes a lot easier to sort of create and design challenges and dangers for our players, because we'll have a clear idea of what is trying to be achieved with those, so we can kind of create some consistency, which is a really good way to really improve the immersion for our players. So it's kind of what we're doing, and that's where we're at here. And so that's what I'm skipping over the leaders and everything, and like I was saying, we'll work on those probably on Friday when we start working on the campaign itself a little bit. And so because it'll be easier for us to kind of think about the leaders and underlings based on how we need them and what kind of creatures fit the stat blocks and everything that we need, the challenge ratings that we end up needing for our players based on the level and all that stuff. Like that, the leaders and underlings kind of becomes a lot more like mechanical in terms of how just like the game works and everything, and using stat blocks. So I want to save that one, and instead I just want to think about these guys and what they're trying to achieve. So if their overall goal, so the overall goal of this faction is simple and straightforward. They wish to create an army of sorts that is comprised of the well, I don't even, that's not even really it. That's not really even it. They kind of do that. They're kind of creating like a menagerie, but that's not really the goal. That's just something they do because they view those creatures as gifts. Not really their goal. Their goal really is to kill the players. Just like basically their ultimate goal is to appease the tears, so that they can sort of keep like basking in the holy rays, which is just like magical radiation. No, Kaldar, that's perfectly good, and in fact, I like the vague ideas better, because that gives us a lot of freedom to work with. So I still appreciate it, and that's kind of what I had figured you meant. But I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate the ideas, and I will definitely, like I say, I'll look through those, and we can kind of bring those out on stream on Friday once I've had the chance to kind of look through them, and we're going to start using them. So I think that's awesome, and it's like also one of the perfect examples of why I love the idea of the Discord server, and being able to share ideas, because that way those ideas aren't just going to get lost in the chat here, where I will promptly forget about them, as I always do, because my life is so busy and my brain gets scattered as the day goes on. So no, I appreciate that, and I think that's the perfect place to put those ideas, and I will definitely be excited to look over those. But yeah, so the overall goal for this really isn't building the army. That's just like kind of something that they're doing. Like they're really they simply want to serve and appease the interplanar tears, specifically the one near where they have set up their compound. Yeah, the overall goal of this faction is rather simple and straightforward. Simply want to serve and appease the interplanar set up near their compound. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. As a function of this goal, their primary activities are presenting sacrifices, presenting sacrifices to the portal, and accepting accepting the gifts of the Wowie. You can tell I've been streaming for a little while because my coherency and my ability to type are slowly decaying. Maybe not so slowly at this point in time. I'm just like, how does a keyboard work? I don't know. As a function of this goal, their primary activities are presenting sacrifices to the portal and accepting the gifts of the abominations that the portal produces. They have built up a sort of menagerie of creatures that they like. I'm trying to think about what their mentality to these things would be, because I do like the idea of them viewing these creatures as like holy creatures that are gifts from their god. But at the same time, I do think that they think that they're above them in some way, that they are like the primary. And the best thing I can think of is, I think menagerie is a good term, because I almost think that they view it as like a zoo, right? Where people will look at the majesty of the animals in a zoo. You know, they'll look at the tigers and the, you know, and the dolphins or whatever's at the zoo, and they'll be like, wow, what amazing creatures, you know, and people will even say, wow, what amazing creatures given to us on this earth from God, right? Like, people will say those things, but they're like, the overwhelming majority of humans will also look at that and be like, and just like, it's not even something they think about, because it's just a baseline understanding that humans are at a different level above them, right? With the exception of perhaps like the great apes and dolphins, which a lot of people will view as particularly intelligent creatures, right? But it's like, even then, there's sort of like this concept of like, wow, they've been, what special creatures, they've been gifted with intelligence, you know, but it's still with like the understanding that human intelligence and human stature is well above that, right? And so I kind of feel like that's how they view these creatures, as like, wow, look at these beautiful creatures given to us directly from our God. He's like, he's made these deer and rabbits like better, they're more pure, you know, like those being just like the weird twisted you know, homunculi that are the forest critters that have been corrupted by the radiation from this like portal, right? And so they see these creatures and they're like, wow, what an amazing gift. And now we'll put you in the cage and we'll take care of you and we'll worship you, you know? It's like worshiping a cow while also still having to like feed and take care of it, right? It's that kind of weird two sides of the same coin situation is, I guess, kind of where my mind is landing on viewing this. So they've built up a sort of menagerie or zoo of creatures that they have collected from the tear. They have built up a sort of menagerie or zoo of creatures that they have collected from the tear, that they care for as though they were not as though care for as they view them as creatures gifted to them directly from their, quote, God itself. And I kind of feel like, so here's where we can almost kind of reconcile the idea of, you know, the baptism and having particularly messed up like, you know, leaders, like particularly the leaders being particularly messed up Drow. We could almost like have like humanoid monstrosities that are the result of this, and those are the only ones who like appear to the players. And maybe it's because like they've been like, they're not leaders in the sense of being like leaders of the cult, but rather leaders as in like, that's how they get their like they're like holy figures, maybe. So it's like the decision makers are still standard Drow, and like they like choose arbiters of sorts that are sent to the portal as like a higher gift, right? So it's like those are gifts to the portal to do with what they will, like, and maybe that's like a baptism that's like not gifted to leaders per se, but maybe those who like the leader's decree have been called upon or something like that, to serve a different purpose, and they kind of become these like horrifying creatures, and those are like the boss battles or something. But the leaders themselves are just sort of like a council of Drow that make decisions about all of that kind of stuff, you know. So we can kind of set it up like that, and that would be a really interesting system, I think. There's just so many ideas. There's not enough room in this one cult for all of the ideas. But that's actually really good, because that means we can, whatever ideas we don't settle on, we can kind of back pocket those ones and then use them for other cults and other factions in the future. I think that would be great. I think that would be really great. yeah, I think, I don't know, we got a lot of really good stuff here. I'm really digging what's kind of arising here. One thing that I want to do also here, I'm gonna add just a completely new section here, and it's something that I'm surprised I haven't had reason to put into my template in the first place. And what I want to do is I want to do a section of just iconography. Iconography, there it is, iconography. Like, I kind of want to do that, and like not explicitly just like icons, but just like generally speaking, like iconography. We'll say iconography, I mean, I guess I'm gonna say rituals. I don't like that for a template because not all factions are gonna be crazy religious things, and so they might not have rituals. They might just have, like, you know, functions. You know, like, you know, because like a faction could include, you know, the city council. You know, that's the faction. And so, like, city council doesn't have rituals, they have council meetings, right? So it's like but there's still kind of like, I mean, actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if anyone else has ever been to like a city council meeting, but there's something kind of ritualistic about how those are operated too. A lot of times, where it's like, okay, now is the moment when we will recite the minutes from the last meeting, and then someone just like gives a bullet point of like, we talked about the potholes and downtown area, and we discussed the color of the new fence being put around the bridge over the river, like that, you know. And then they're like, now we shall say the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, we will have bringing forth of the tabling of the ideas, and then, like, you know, you need someone to present the idea, and then someone must second the idea for it to be discussed. And then there's like a specific time in which the citizens may express their concerns, but they have to fill out a card so that it can be reviewed by the council before it's discussed. Like, it's really ritualistic. I'm really entering a tangent here, but I feel like the amount of tangent I just went on suggests that maybe I have some unaddressed feelings about city councils. And maybe I need to examine my feelings about that a little bit more. Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, I guess. But no, I kind of want to talk about just maybe some iconography and rituals for these guys. So let's just copy that and look right here. And instead of saying actions taken, we'll just rewrite that to say iconography. Iconography. Just so that we can like kind of put some consistency there. And I'm less worried right now about coming up with like a specific symbol or something. But like, you know, we talked about the cipher and stuff like that, and I kind of want to just like put that type of stuff in writing too, so then when we go about using it for our campaign, we kind of have a pool of ideas and like resources and stuff that we can use for them. So iconography, I want to put the idea of the cipher. I really like that idea of the cipher, because I really think that that's going to be an excellent way to piecemeal provide for our players clues about what's happening and what this cult is up to, while sticking to the idea of them never really interacting with like verbal and sentient members of this cult, right? Because the Drow themselves will not present themselves to the players. Like, that'll be part of it, and we can actually put that as part of like the rituals, where it's like they feel they feel they are above all of the other creatures, and so they must not present themselves to outsiders, as doing so would be unbefitting of purified creatures of their stature, or something like that. Would be an interesting one. So for the iconography, though, for itself, we'll do cipher. The cult has created a written language of their own that is used for religious purposes. And that's what we can do. This is actually, that's actually perfect, and that gives us an excuse for why there would be some translations and stuff around, like going between common and the cipher. Because if it was like the only language they used, then there would never be anything to like really to at least in the short amount of time players are going to spend in there, for them to really decipher what's going on. But if we say that like the cipher is only for religious purposes, and so like some of the holy texts will have like the holy site, like the holy cipher there, and below it the common language, like maybe there's educational material to teach new priests or something like that. Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. It's a written language that is used for religious purposes and nothing else. There exist texts that are explicit translations between this holy language. There exist texts that are explicit translations between this holy language and common, primarily as educational tools used to train new priests or priestesses. There we go. Yeah, I really like the idea of that cipher. I really, really like that. I also feel like I do want to put down, I guess I am going to put one specific bit of imagery that they'll use here for it. I want to do the primary symbol that the cult uses for members to signal their membership to one another is a circle with a jagged line through it, representing the shape of the portal that the portal that is near where the cult compound is located. So like players can see, like they'll see like drawn, like painted on walls, or they might see a medallion lying on the ground somewhere or something. That is basically, it's just a circle with like a you know, like a jagged line going through it, like a hollow, like I'm envisioning like a medallion that would be like a ring, like a metal ring that's like hollow in the center, right? So it's like an actual ring, not a circle. And then, but then there's like a line of that same metal that follows the contours of the portal, that kind of bisects the circle there, the ring. So like they would have something like that, and that would be it. And so it's like it would be kind of meaningless until players start to understand exactly what's going on. They can suddenly realize like, oh, maybe this represents that portal or something like that. So I want to add that in there, and like that could be a fun thing. Like, and the thing that's always fun about imagery and stuff like that is you can totally use that to make props for players, right? Little props to hand out if you're playing in real life, like an in-person game. I play with my players primarily online, so we don't use props a whole lot. But I will sometimes give them like maps and stuff digitally that they can look at, so you can still give them like a drawing of it and like images of it. So that stuff is fun. But yeah, so there's that, and so now we got about we still got time. We got time. Let's work on some rituals a little bit here. So I want to the important ritual here is sacrifice. There are two. There's the sacrifice, and then there's baptism. I feel like are the two important ones. So sacrifice. In an attempt to appease the portal, which is viewed as sentient in some way. Like I feel like it's kind of unclear even to them how they view it as sentient. They just believe that it's sentient. So we'll say in an attempt to appease the portal, which is viewed as sentient in some way, the cult members will oftentimes sacrifice living creatures to it by forcing the creatures through. We'll say it is believed that if many creatures or powerful creatures are sent back in return, the sacrifice was seen, or the sacrifice was pleasing to the portal. And we'll say primarily they sacrifice woodland creatures, but when the opportunity presents itself, they are always very eager to present humanoids to the portal, right? And so that like explains that explains the gusto with which they will chase and try to capture our player characters. Ooh, I think that's good. Ooh, that's good. Ooh, this is turning out really good. I'm really happy about this. Ooh, I like it. There's one other ritual that I'm going to put here. It's not really a ritual, but I'm going to put down I'm going to put down isolation, and I'll explain that one in a minute, because I want to do baptism first. Oftentimes, the Council of Cult Leaders will decree that a member or multiple members of the cult have been chosen to be baptized in the glory of the portal. Not protal. That sounds like protal sounds like some sort of medical procedure. Oh man, honey, today's gonna be a bad day. I gotta go to the doctors. I got my protal this morning. Jeez. I don't know what it would be, but that's what it sounds like to me. Okay, so oftentimes the Council of Cult Leaders will decree that a member or multiple members of the cult have been chosen to be baptized in the glory of the portal. We'll say this is seen as a great honor as these selected members have been chosen to be purified and to become, we'll say, one of the holy creatures that the portal often sends as gifts. So it's like they see themselves as being turned into one of the gifts or something like that. And we'll say the process is to shackle the individual, and then we'll do the fancy little parentheses s, because sometimes it's multiple but sometimes it's singular. Process is to shackle the individual to a stone slab that is at the base of the portal, where they are left for 3 days as the magical power of the portal washes over them. And that's like the baptism, and it just like slowly corrupts them and changes them and mutates them in often unpredictable ways. So I really like that. And so now the other one, isolation. Isolation isn't exactly the right word, but I can't think of a better word because my brain is mush because I've been going for like 2 hours. So we're just gonna stick with isolation for the moment, and we'll say the members of the court or of the cult believe themselves to be higher, more purified beings than the average humanoid. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Here's how I want to do it. Here's what I want to do it. In an effort to ensure that they are not corrupted, not corrupted in any way, and remain pure, they do not allow themselves to interact with or even be seen by outsiders. And we'll say, instead, they often send in, we'll say they often send in the baptized individuals to interact with outsiders, as it is believed that the baptism makes them pure enough that they cannot be corrupted simply by interacting with said outsiders. Boom, there we go. I like that. I really like that I've put these here, because I feel like now, having written it down, I feel like I have a pretty clear idea of who this cult is, what this cult does, and how they go about doing it. And I think I have a really clear idea now of how this cult is going to interact with the players when they interact with this cult. So, yeah, that's good. This is really good stuff, and I'm feeling very enthusiastic about this. I feel much more enthusiastic than sort of the previous iterations of how I was going to have the players interacting with the Drow here. I'm feeling much better about how all of this is coming together. And now I am even more excited than I already was to start working on the next section of this campaign on Friday. Yeah, I like this. I like this a lot. This is going to be great. This is going to be really great. And our timing is kind of perfect, too. We got about 5 minutes until it's 1:30, which is when I usually do my switch over to video gaming. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm gonna really quickly switch this over to just chatting. Here we go. I'll direct anyone out there. I'll direct you guys, if you're watching live, to the About page of my Twitch stream, or if you're watching the VOD on YouTube, you can find all of my social media links and stuff like that. You can find all of that in the video description below. If you really like the stream, first and foremost, if you really like the stream, it's really helpful if you guys go ahead and follow if you're on Twitch, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. It's really helpful to me to sort of see those communities grow, and it's really encouraging to me too to sort of see all of that stuff and see the stream grow that way. So yeah, if you could please do that for me, if you feel I've entertained you and earned that, it is a great honor to me if you would do that for me. Additionally, if you want to see more of me in other places as well. Yeah, that's almost awkward, but not quite awkward. I'm not going to say it that way anymore just to be safe. If you want to follow me on other social media outlets, I've mentioned a lot of these already today on stream, but just to reiterate, I do have a Discord server. If you like talking about D&D stuff, if you want to share ideas that you have, if you want to get feedback on stuff that you're writing, all that kind of stuff, that Discord server is a really cool place to go. I like to interact with people and hear ideas that people have there. But it's also a good, fun place. I want it to be just a fun server, so if you want to, if you find people, it's a good place to collect people with similar interests and stuff. So if you want to just talk about games, different tabletop RPGs, different video games, if you want to share pictures of your pets or whatever, it's a great Discord to do that. I also make sure to put a lot of announcements about, when I'm going live for my streams, when I have to change my streaming schedule and stuff like that. I use Discord a lot as a way to just basically interact with the community. So if you want to be a bit more involved with what I'm working on, then Discord is the place to go. If you want to get updates but you're not sure Discord's the place, I do have a Twitter, and among also just occasionally trying to do stupid tweets and just like share random stupid disjointed thoughts that I have. I also use Twitter as a place to make announcements about when I'm going live, and again about the stream schedule and stuff like that. So find me, follow me at Inviter Streams on Twitter. I also oftentimes in my streams mention a lot of other things that I do with my life that aren't related to streaming, and people are sometimes interested in that. And if that description fits you, you should follow me on my Instagram, Inviterboy Streams. I share little clips of me doing my kickboxing training, rock climbing. I love sharing pictures of my cat there because she's adorable. So if that just sounds fun, you can follow me there on Instagram as well. And then I already kind of mentioned it, and some of you may be watching here, but I do have a YouTube channel. So if you like the streams, but it's hard to watch all the time exactly when I go live, go check out my YouTube channel. I put all my VODs there. And I also have some other projects that I'm working on as I'm trying to understand and learn how to do video editing. It's just something I've always been interested in, but never really made the time to learn. And these days I'm kind of trying to make the time to learn. So maybe eventually there'll be some funny, goofy, really crappy, amateurish videos that show up there. I don't know, but if all that sounds fun and interesting to you, then follow me on YouTube. And so, yeah, so I guess the only other thing is I'll just say again, thank you, first off, for stopping by and watching. I appreciate that. If you're interested in helping me out and helping me grow my stream, first and foremost, like, subscribe, follow, all that kind of stuff. Tell a friend. If you have a friend who you think would find this stuff really interesting, then let them know to stop by sometime. Like, just that type of stuff is the most helpful. But I do know some other people also like to help out in, helping me actually get better equipment, like an actual mic rather than just using my headset mic all the time. And if you really want to do that, there's obviously no requirement to, but I do have a donation page, and it is always appreciated, if never required, for you to donate there as well. So there's that option if you are interested. But yeah, so with all of that self-advertisement out of the way, all of that self-aggrandizing, letting my ego grow by pretending that I have a big, huge following, it's super interesting, all that stuff. I really appreciate all of you guys and all of the levels of interest any of you have. I appreciate everyone stopping by. I have a whole lot of fun with this stuff. If you want to check me out later this week, today's Tuesday, tomorrow being Wednesday, there will be no streams. I don't stream on Wednesday, but I will, as of right now, there's nothing getting in the way of me being back Thursday and Friday, 11:30 a.m. both days is when writing starts. So if you want to come back and see more writing, if you want to see how I start using this cult in an actual campaign that I'm writing, definitely stop by Friday. Thursday is I run my games with a few sort of house rule type things. And so Thursday is when I like to just sort of, work on ironing those out, work on adding details to house rules and stuff like that. So if you want to just come have discussions about that stuff, Thursday is the time to be here. And then Friday is when we work on the campaign. But writing starts at 11:30 a.m. on those days. And then every day that I stream at 1:30 p.m. I switch over, and that's when I play video games. And I play a variety of video games, so if you want to just see me being super over enthusiastic about video games, then hey, like today, stick around. I'm going to take a break and then start gaming, but if you can't, then stop by on Thursday and Friday. But yeah, that's my schedule for the rest of this week. In general, my schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, following those times. Next week, Monday, I'm unlikely to be able to stream. I will put announcements about that on Discord and Twitter. So I more definitive decisions on that later. Yeah, okay, I think that's everything I have. So as I've said, I'm going to just take a, I usually take about a 15-minute break right around now, just to rest my voice a little bit before I come back for a couple hours of gaming. Today I am continuing my playthrough of one of my most favorite nostalgic games, Halo 2. Right now, because everyone's in love with Halo, but I suck at online multiplayer stuff, so I'm not going to try and, make a splash in Halo Infinite. That's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I'm just going to embarrass myself, and people are going to feel embarrassed for me, and it's not great. So instead, I'm in the mood for Halo. I'm going to play Halo 2. So if you want to see me spaz out over one of my favorite games of all time, then stick around or check back in a little bit, and I will be playing Halo 2 this afternoon. But other than that, that's all I got. So thank you again to everyone who stopped by. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the ideas that you guys present. You guys had some really cool ideas, and it's like, not only is it just like helpful because it, you come up with cool ideas that help me make a better campaign, but it's just really fun to discuss fun, cool homebrew ideas with other people who have the same interests. So thank you to everyone who stopped by and helped out and was chatting with me. It's really cool, and I really appreciate that you guys are interested in the stuff that I'm doing. So I'm going to take my break. I'll leave you guys here with a little bit of music just going on. We got our chill music. I'll leave you with the music. There will be a point where the stream will kind of cut off for just a second. That's just me switching it over to the gaming stuff for the sake of the VODs. So I promise I will be back even if it cuts off, so just stick around. And I will see you in like 15 minutes. Or later this week, or whenever the next time I see you. Whenever I see you next, I'm excited about it, and I appreciate you guys. So sit tight, and I will see you soon.